Hello, I'm Brianna Natal, and I'll be giving an overview of our paper, which was published in the Journal of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, titled Duration of Breastfeeding Mediates the Association Between Early Socioeconomic Risk and Child Vocabulary at Age 4. Prior work has reliably shown that early life socioeconomic status is associated with a number of child outcomes. In particular, early socioeconomic disadvantage has been related to poorer cognitive ability and obesity as measured by body mass index. One potential mechanism linking socioeconomic status to these particular child outcomes is duration of breastfeeding during infancy, as breast milk is rich with nutrients that can both stimulate brain development and promote a healthy adiposity profile in the developing child. However, these associations have rarely been tested in high-income Western populations, and research on breastfeeding as a mediator between socioeconomic status and child vocabulary is scarce in general. So we aim to examine these relationships in a Norwegian cohort. We had 4 hypotheses for this study. First, we predicted that greater family socioeconomic risk in the first year of life would predict poorer vocabulary and greater BMI at age 4. Second, we predicted that greater socioeconomic risk would relate to a shorter breastfeeding duration. Third, we predicted that longer breastfeeding duration would associate with greater vocabulary and lower BMI at age 4. And finally, we expected breastfeeding to act as a mediator between socioeconomic risk and both child vocabulary and child BMI. We tested these hypotheses in the Behavior Outlook Norwegian Developmental Study, or BONDS, which prospectively followed 1,157 families, about half of which had daughters. Notably, this sample was consistent with Norwegian norms on all of our main variables of interest, which is illustrated in the descriptives table here. In general, the sample was socioeconomically advantaged, with only 20% of families endorsing one of the socioeconomic risk factors. In addition, 71% of children were breastfed for at least 6 months, which is in line with the national average. Mean BMI and age-equivalent vocabulary scores were also consistent with Norwegian standards. As far as the procedure, families underwent assessments every 6 to 12 months during the first 4 years of the child's life. Family socioeconomic risk in the first year of life was determined by collecting parent report of education, occupation, financial hardship, housing condition, and single parent status. The final socioeconomic risk variable represented the number of risk categories that were endorsed by the parent. Throughout the first year and into the second year, mothers also reported whether or not they were still breastfeeding their child. And then 2 years later, at the age 4 visit, child receptive vocabulary was tested using the British Picture Vocabulary Scale. This is a picture-to-word matching task which asks children to select the picture that corresponds to the word the experimenter said. Also at age 4, children's height and weight were obtained to calculate their BMI. In terms of results, our PATH model adjusted for all demographic and perinatal covariates found that greater socioeconomic risk was significantly associated with poorer vocabulary at age 4, but unrelated to child BMI. We also found that greater socioeconomic risk significantly predicted a shorter breastfeeding duration. In addition, greater breastfeeding duration was significantly associated with vocabulary at age 4, but not BMI. And finally, when examining mediation, breastfeeding was found to be a significant mediator in the relationship between socioeconomic risk and child vocabulary. So the study is among the first to identify breastfeeding as a mechanism by which socioeconomic status has long-term effects on child vocabulary development. Greater socioeconomic risk was associated with shorter breastfeeding duration, which in turn predicted poorer vocabulary at age 4. Our novel finding was strengthened by the prospective examination of these relationships in a large population-based cohort. However, the generalizability of these results might be limited to Norway and other high-income socially equitable countries. Also, while we did control for several covariates, we could not account for the potential roles of maternal IQ or BMI in these relationships. Nevertheless, this study points to the importance of breastfeeding promotion efforts, as our findings suggest that a longer breastfeeding duration promotes child vocabulary, which might have implications for intervention, especially among families at greater socioeconomic risk. I would encourage you to read our paper in the Journal of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics for more details. And if you have any questions or comments on this research, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.